So today in our session we'll try to install and configure Hadoop on our virtual machine, which is a Red Hat system with Java and SSH enabled. Those are the two prerequisites that we have for Java for Hadoop as a startup. So let me start this virtual machine, and once it comes up, as we discussed yesterday, we have downloaded Hadoop from Hadoop's Apache site. We'll try to, and we also have unzipped it, so we'll now try to configure different XML files that are part of that particular installation, and we will try to configure the same and check if all the key processes both related to HDFS and MapReduce are working there. So let's wait for which the system comes up. Now those of you who have their own virtual boxes or some configurations at any virtual machine which is Linux based, feel free to use the same. All as we required yesterday, we discussed that we require basic like Java 1.6 to be there, as well as also your SSH enabled on that system. We'll log in into this machine. So we have already created a Hadoop underscore install in the home Oracle folder, and in that folder we unzipped the Hadoop binary file that we downloaded, the tar file from Hadoop site, Apache Hadoop site. Let's go into the Hadoop binary package, and this is all what we'll be seeing in the different configuration of files, as well as there are different directories which are available there. So now as part of the installation, we'll try to modify some of the existing files, do some minor default settings, and then we'll kickstart your Hadoop system processes. So just as a quick check, because that's a prerequisite, let's see if Java is running fine. So that's something which we did ensure earlier as part of our configuration. So this is a check that you should be doing if you are having your own virtual machine. Make sure that Java is installed. Java 1.6 from Sun is recommended, but you can have OpenJDK also if it's an Ubuntu and other type of operating systems which you are following, and SSH. These are the key things which are required. SSH and all is something which is used by your Hadoop processes to communicate to each other, and as we go more into the details, we'll try to understand those processes and how the communication work out. But yeah, just make sure that your SSH and all is enabled. So now we are in this configuration folder. The basic prerequisite of Java and SSH has been checked. Now let's go ahead and start modifying certain key files which are specific to Hadoop install. The first thing that we'll do is we'll go ahead into the conf folder. This is where you have the different configuration files listed. You will have a set of different files available here we'll try to modify some of these files, and throughout our course at the HDFS level we'll try to understand these files, the key things which gets into these files and the configurations and things like that. So we'll first open the configuration file hadoop-env.sh. We'll use the VI editor to do that. So use the VI editor, hadoop env.sh. If you take a look into it, it has a different amount of, I'll say different number of variables which are available, and these are the different ones. So most of them are commented. You can see that it's commented by hash, but all the memory related things, the Java home, class paths, memory related stuff, how much memory you want to allocate to Hadoop processes and as a whole Hadoop, and then at individual process level is all what you use this file to configure for. And any other SSH options that you have, the timeout windows, all those things are configured. So as we talked about, that Hadoop is a framework wherein you are given the flexibility to configure things rather than you code things, because coding has already been done for you, and you are given these XML files and script files to modify things which you want to customize as per your usage. So the thing that we'll modify here is the Java location. So we'll have to set the Java home right and point it to the right directory. We did it yesterday. We know that this is different. So let's copy that particular file. I'll just open another terminal windows on this box just to know where that file is available. Now if we go root, this is something which should point to I know that in the bash RC yesterday we did that setting, so this is the place which I'll have to add it up. So I'll just do a copy, and on this location I'll paste the same. First of all, we'll have to uncomment this. Hadoop is entirely written in Java, and that's the reason why it requires to know where is the Java home available. So we'll delete that. Click paste. So in this file, the hadoop-env.sh, this is the only setting that you will modify right now. But as I said, that this file is used for many other changes from a memory as well as overall a process level configuration. That's something which we'll see later when we go more deep into Hadoop configuration. But from an installation perspective, make sure that you just point it to the right file or your Java location that is available. Do a write and quit and save this file. If you do a cat hadoop-env.sh, you do see that the changes that you did should go up. Yep. So this change is getting reflected on your Windows as well. So hadoop-env is the first file that you modify, and you uncomment basically the variable which is pointing to Java home and specify it to the right location of the Java installation directory where it is applicable. Now we'll go ahead and we'll start in this particular folder. There are a bunch of XML files, the key XML files that we'll be modifying in. But before we do that, let's go back and try to create a temporary directory for our Hadoop specific write-up. Now this is the directory which Hadoop, we will specify Hadoop, or we will provide Hadoop to use for all its intermediate write, and this is a place which is kind of reserved for Hadoop. This is the place which it will use to write your file system and persist it. So this is a directory which Hadoop requires to write its processes, intermediate data, and things like that. So I'll create a thing called mkdir and then Hadoop, call it as htemp, Please remember the location of this particular directory. It is /home oracle htm. That's the same path which we'll configure. Now let's go back to the Hadoop system. Go back into your conf folder to ls-ltr. So now open the file core-site.xml. That's the file which is available here. And put it into insert mode because we will be trying to modify and put some details inside it. And this file will try to provide the temporary directory location which Hadoop should be using to store configure it processes corresponding to HDFS and MapReduce. So at least at this point of time, all I want you guys to focus on is that this XML file is getting modified and we are putting the location of the temporary file directory here. Now the details of it will come later when I'll be sharing with you a detailed file on this thing, that how a fully filled core -site or other XML files looks like, but that is something which we'll be covering. But right now just focus on that one. So in these type of configuration files, we'll be adding different properties. The only thing I'll caution you guys is that I'll say specific about the typos. Hadoop in that sense is not very elegant in doing the check and initial level itself. So all the well-formed check or XML, if you do one typo, one extra space, those could create problems. So make sure that at least you don't do that mistakes. Again, it's not going to take any shortcut. So if there are any mistakes, it will complain, and you will have to then look into the directories and the log files to figure it out. So corresponding to Hadoop, okay, again there it is, hadoop.tmp.dir. Now there are different numbers, the amount of these individual settings which you have to specify. Corresponding to this variable Hadoop tmp.dir, we will specify the location of temporary directory that we have created. Remember correctly, that was /home. Let me close this window, it's no longer needed. /home oracle /htemp. There is an optional description field, but you don't need to write that. Just make sure that there's no typo at this level. But as I said, that even if it there, it will anyway complain and put in. So just add this value, I think. Yep. And there is one more actually. Let's write and quit. Open this file again. There is one more value. Please remember that the bare minimum that you require is all of these are optional things which will at least install on configure your Hadoop in a more systematic manner, but the bare minimum that you require is the uncommenting and specifying of your Java home in your hadoop-env.sh. That is the only thing which is a prerequisite. All of these files can be kept empty and you can still kickstart Hadoop, but we will try to do it a more systematic way. So that's why we are actually setting some of these properties. I know a lot of you guys did interacted with me in terms of finding a different user level, and also as I said that we are installing it under root privileges, but feel free to do it at any other user level. It's just that we don't want to go into like Linux level user configuration challenges and all. That's why we chose a safer path to use it as root, because root we know has all the privileges which will be required. But if you are good in Linux administration and security profile settings, feel free to do it at individual level also. So this is the another variable, fs default name. Now this is the variable which against which we will specify the, I'll say, access for our HDFS, that how we want to access our HDFS file system. You put it normally in a HTTP type of format, and then here you just put it here localhost. It's always good to at least specify 5-digit IP addresses. That's what Hadoop typically uses, but we know that at least in networking from 0 to 1024 the ports are reserved. So in Linux, at least in Hadoop, they typically follow these 5-digit things. Anything can work unless until if it's conflicting, it will anyway give you issues. But yeah, feel free to put a file thing range. That is something which is used for. So that is where it puts in property name. Hello. Do a right hand quit and put that part. The next file that we'll modify is again, let's go there. These are the two files which we just modified. Now there are other two files which we'll be modifying. One specific to HDFS and one specific to the MapReduce framework. Whatever you set in core-site, that is generic across your entire Hadoop. But anything specific to HDFS, you set it into the HDFS-site. So vi hdfs-site.xml. Again, all of these files you can see are in that same generic format. Configuration is the default tag, and they're pretty much empty itself. Nothing is configured. And you specify the details which you want to put in. So in the HDFS-site, we'll add certain values. We'll try to set a default replication factor. Now we know that ours is a quasi-clustered installation, wherein in one virtual machine we are installing all the Hadoop processes. So in order to have optimum usage of memory and storage, we'll set the replication factor as 1. Now we will cover the replication factor in more details at the theory level when we go to those topics, but this is the value which is used to decide how many copies of a specific file needs to be available in a Hadoop cluster. Default in Hadoop it is 3, but in this case, since we have only one virtual machine, we don't want to make 3 copies on one virtual machine. It doesn't make much sense. Replication is typically used for a, I'll say, a disaster recovery type of scenario. That if you lose some nodes or some hard disk, you should be able to recover data. We'll keep it 1 for our purpose here, but we will see later on that how you can modify that. So it's not something which you got stuck with. You can always change this replication factor later on, even when your cluster is up and running. So that's something which we'll practice at our HDFS command level exercises. But yeah, right now for our default, we are just putting it as 1 to be available there. Let's do a right hand quit and save that particular part. The next file that we'll modify is the mapred-site. This is for MapReduce framework. As I said, that all these are just we are trying to make at least somewhat decent configuration, but all of these are optional. All you need is the initial Hadoop-env changes which we did to point it to the Java directory, and that's it. All of this will just configure this particular system or Hadoop in a more I'll say systematic way. So herein we'll just try to provide another property for our job tracker to point it to a specific port address. And all of that you can see are taking inputs in the form of this property, and then inside that name value. parameter that you use is mapred.job.tracker. Just point to some specific port. 5-digit port convention is typically followed as a good practice. Okay, we have an issue. As I said, that be aware about the typos. This might actually create issues. After configuring or changing these 3 configuration files, if you take a look, lsltr, the key files that we have, hadoop-env is the file wherein we modified the Java home variable and we pointed it to the Java installation directory on this virtual machine. Core site, HDFS site, and MapRed. We configure certain properties by specifying the default directories and some other stuffs, individual properties. We'll see them later when we discuss those individual details of HDFS and MapReduce. Now we'll go ahead and we will start our Hadoop system. So we'll go one level up, ls, and at this level we are using bash shell, so we'll have to be one level up than the bin part. But if you don't want to write something like bin/hadoop, because if you go in here, if you go cd bin, you have this Hadoop scripts that we need to execute, but directly if you type Hadoop, it's not going to recognize that, so you'll have to go up. This is a default property of your bash shell. If you want to use directly Hadoop, just move to the Corn shell and it starts recognizing, but we'll follow that bash shell convention. Use Hadoop, then we'll use the name node and we will format it. That's something which is a convention. Whenever you do a raw installation of Hadoop or configuration, you always format the file system. Although even if there is nothing available on the directory which we specified, the temporary directories and all, but it's always a good practice to do a format. So if it shows you that message, this means that these things are good enough. It does tries to give you at a high level some statistics. You can see that this version, it gives you some default thing, the place where it's running, the default distribution which comes at Apache. It's a Hortonwork distribution and some high level details around it. So this is good enough. Now we'll start the key processes which are there in our Hadoop file system, and we know that it's basically a combination of your HDFS and MapReduce. So let's go now into bin to kickstart those processes after formatting. That's an important thing. Please make sure that you do that. If you come in here, you have these 2 scripts. Okay, let me do ls-alt here. You have a stop all to stop all the processes and start all. We will start with first kickstart all the processes, and that's what will start all the Hadoop related processes. Right now, if you see, if I put JPS, which is a command to check the Java processes, you don't have any of the processes running, name node, data node, and things like that. But soon after we start the processes, you will see that you have a bunch of processes running in. So you have /, just start all. Remember, you are in the PWD directory, you are in the bin folder. So when you did the initial this formatting, you were one level up. Now you enter into the bin folder and now you are adding this particular, starting your process. So /start all. Now in our case, since the SSH is configured in password manner. It will always ask whenever it starts the key processes. It will start for password, and if you have configured your own SSH in a passwordless manner, you will not be prompted. But yeah, in this case, in this virtual machine, it does ask for that. Now if you do a JPS, you will see it will show you the bunch of the processes which get started. So earlier they were just two. After we kick-started the start all, you have name node, data node, secondary name node, job tracker, and task tracker. So these 5 processes together constitute the entire Hadoop system. And this is a mechanism to judge if your processes or if your Hadoop configuration has been done properly or not. As I said many times, because of the typo errors in your XML file configurations, or if you have forget to do the formatting, all those things, it might give you some issue when you fire this start all command. But if you do analyze the logs, if you go up at the Hadoop binary level file structure, you have the logs file also. If you go into logs and do NLS LTR, you do have all these key processes available there, and accordingly you can check that part and all. But yeah, that's something mostly you will do only when you have some issues going on there. Right now for us, the installation seems to be good enough. Now both your HDFS and MapReduce, the key components, are exposed in a UI manner also. So let's try to check them from a UI perspective. The inbuilt Firefox browser is available in the VirtualBox. Use this http://localhost:570. This is the port where your name node and HDFS process runs. So name node, you can see it will put in here. It gives you at a high level the details of your distributed file system. You can see right now it's a live node because we have one virtual machine, and that's the only one we are using for all the processes. So it says that live node is 1. There is no dead node, neither there is anyone which is in a decommissioning process. But if in a multi-machine cluster, if you have processes which are now disconnected because of network issues, or which are processes which are in decommissioning state, it will notify you that detail. You can browse the file system which is there in HDFS in a visual manner. Right now if you click, it does not shows you anything. Home is something which it is referring to the local one itself, but that's something which is available. To check the logs, you click on the name node logs and it gives you the details here as well. Same thing, you can see user logs, history, all that thing comes in. So that's a visual way to analyze the same detail which you did saw at the command prompt level. The other port which is of important is the localhost 500, I think 60 port. Oh, yeah, this is where your task tracker runs. Now I think that's something which is not important. Task tracker, more than task tracker, the 530 is important. So just change this port. Now these are default ports. Again, you can always override that. When we go through the processes in more detail, we'll talk about how to override this port, but normally you don't change them. These are all default things which the default Hadoop distribution comes it with. So just close the task tracker. The two key things is this name node or the HDFS, which is at 570. If it's running properly, it will open up and show you this detail. And the MapReduce framework, your analytics part. Right now you can see it does not shows you anything. There is no running jobs, no finished jobs or failed jobs. It just gives you at a high level that this much heap size is allocated and all that particular thing out of the 1 GB thing which is the default for your MapReduce. And also this is a visual way to check if your Hadoop related processes have started successfully And these are the two master things which runs: your name node, which is your HDFS part, and then your job tracker, which is the MapReduce part. So visually you can monitor the same, and as we said that you just type JPS and you should be seeing these 5 processes: name node, data node, and secondary name node, which constitutes your HDFS, and job tracker and task tracker, which constitutes your MapReduce framework related processes. If your JPS gives this thing, as well as if you are able to, through the UI option, if you are able to see the key processes up and running, both your name node and the data node at these specific ports, this means that your Hadoop installation is good and you are ready to move to the next level in terms of practicing something more details. So make sure that you work on these things and try to get your installation done. It should help you out in configuring the system in a proper way. Thank you.